Hey everyone, my name's Charlie Butcher and I'm the Chief Educational Technology here at the University of Lynchburg, and I'm going to try to complete this assignment for our EDCI 630 instructional design class about analyzing a theoretical approach for an instructional design model. And I'm hoping this is okay, Dr. Don, but I'm going to try to take a little different approach and talk a little bit about ADDIE and the SAM model, because I think they're really similar. Just the fact that there's one big difference, and I'll start out with the big difference, in that I feel like the SAM model takes bigger chunks and breaks them down to small chunks so that you can really grow or build this course quickly, and then you can tweak more quickly and do those kinds of things, which I think is really what the ADDIE model does and can do if you do it correctly. But I think they both really rely on backwards design. And backwards design is the key for anything, I think, in building out any type of education, whether you're building curriculum, whether you're building an online course, whether you're building a pacing guide, whatever. Backwards design has to be, I believe, the method you use, because if you don't know where you want to end up, I'm not sure you know the ways to get there, if that makes sense. So the ADDIE model talks about, analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate, and then I actually cheat and I added a second E, so mine is ADDIE. And I like to include the word edit, because once you evaluate it, you need to go back and make some changes to that model or that course or whatever you're developing using the ADDIE. So I always add that other E when I'm talking with faculty about creating courses or when I'm trying to create trainings for myself. Because if you don't sit back and really look at what happened once it's gone through once and then change the things you need to change, I'm not sure you really need to evaluate, because if you're going to evaluate without doing anything, it doesn't really do you much good. It's just kind of wasting time. So I think we're supposed to break down the model. So we'll talk about, analyze in ADDIE. The A is where you're really laying out the objectives you want the students to learn. And so you've laid out at the end, this is what you want, just like in backwards design. And then you start designing the training program or the different phases to try to meet these. So are you going to do lectures? Are you going to create different training videos? Are you going to have, I hope not, but worksheets? What kind of learning activities are you going to do? Group projects, those kinds of things. Or will you start designing these? Then you're actually going to develop them. That's the second D in ADDIE, where you're actually building out these different training materials and all of your assessments and learning activities. And I did say assessments, and sometimes I like to have my objectives and then build the assessment right after that. So sometimes I'll move a portion of the develop in front of design, because again, I think once you know where you want them to be, you can come up with ways that you want to assess that, and then you can start building out the activities. I hope that makes sense. But the meat of the ADDIE model is really in the development stage, because that's where you spend the bulk of your time, creating those learning activities, creating multimedia content, creating, and I like to use the phrase voice, choice, pace, and place, allowing learners to have a voice in their learning journey, allowing them to choose how they're going to be creative to demonstrate the assessment or the learning material that you're trying to get them to learn. Let them move at their own pace and place where they were doing the learning. In this day and age, learning should be happening anywhere, everywhere, all the time. And the students are looking for that kind of stuff. So that development piece is really important, because you've got to multimodal. It has to meet the needs of all the different types of learners, and you really need to allow them to be creative, because all lesson plans should have creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking in it. And when you're developing these activities and you keep those 4 things in mind, along with voice, choice, pace, and place, it really allows you in the ADDIE model to develop some great stuff. Then you throw it out for consumption, is what I want to say. And that's the implementation phase, where you're actually performing the training, teaching the class, allowing students to go through it, all of that kind of stuff. Once they're done with the course or done with different portions of the course, you're going to evaluate it. And then, like I said before, I add the edit on the end. Once you've evaluated, make those adjustments as you see fit. Now, some of the positives, I think, was the next part of our rubric, and negatives. I find that, it's really a structured approach. And a lot of our faculty, especially in higher ed, need a more structured approach because they really haven't been taught to teach. They are experts in their content, but they're not experts in education. Those of us that went through the School of Education, we got a degree in education, that kind of stuff, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about maybe your business professor, your biology professor, or your sociology professor. And I'm not saying they're bad teachers. I'm just saying that they weren't taught. And 90% of the time, people, when they're not taught how to do something, they rely on how they were taught. And I know that sounds contradictory, but what I mean is how they were taught as a student in their college or graduate school experience. And let's be honest, most of the times if they went through school in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, it was all lecture. And students today really don't want all lecture, so we're pushing away from that. That's, if there's more structured and you're teaching them how to do these steps, I think it's a benefit for helping others. And you said to design this to our world, and that's what I'm trying to do with this assignment, because that's what I do. I work with faculty on how to build out these courses. Another positive, I think, is when you're developing these activities, they can be really learner-centered. I'll veer off for just a second. I really think all of these models are very similar in what they do, whether it's the Pebble model or any of those other models. It's what were the Dick and Carey, I think, was one. The Kemp design. I'm trying to remember back the ones that we read about, and I did not script this out. I don't script out anything. Sorry, that's just the way I work. But reading some different sources and stuff, I think they're very similar. They just talk about things a little differently. But the end result, I think, is pretty much the same kind of thing. So, and when I get to the SAM model, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But so 2 positives: structured approach, learner-centered, and then it allows for you to have iterative improvement. So I have a faculty build a course, and then we go through it. And that first course was 1.0. Next thing will be 2.0 and 3.0 and so on. So you can really, if you evaluate and edit, have iterative improvement on all of your courses and take that feedback. And I also think that ADDIE is very versatile because you can do any number of things, any number of ways using this model. And I think that's another real positive. A couple of the negatives that I read about, it's the resources will be in my written response that I'll turn into you, Dr. Dunn. But, some of them say, it's very linear. To me, I'm not sure that's always a bad thing. There are definite advantages of being able to branch and do different ideas. But I think if you develop your activities in a certain way, that it doesn't have to be linear. But I think the traditional thought of ADDIE is that it's linear. The biggest one that I found in my additional readings was that it can be really time consuming because you spend a lot of time really focusing on each one of these parts and developing all these different activities. And that's, like I said before, the biggest difference between the SAM model, because the SAM wants you to really put something together quickly, smaller chunks, and then you change it really quickly. So it's not as time consuming because you're getting wins quicker and moving on. You're probably still spending the same amount of time, but it doesn't feel like it because you've already got something out there moving and it's working, and the iterations come much, much quicker. Let's see. That's my positives and negatives. So with the SAM model, you know, it's really got, you know, the phases: prep, iterative design, iterative development, and then you're sending it out and evaluating and turning and moving. So I think this is a lot like ADDIE. So, you know, you see this alpha, either that concept of a 1.0 or 2.0, and then you get to the gold standard and those kinds of things where you're really working. You can still do that in ADDIE. I just think in the SAM model, they're wanting you to do it in smaller little chunks. And so your first module may get to your gold standard before your second module does. I think that's the big difference in my understanding of the two models. Full disclosure, I have been really one that uses the ADDIE model over and over and over, and have been using it for years. You know, like all of us, we like what we kind of know. So that's the that's I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that I think the ADDIE model is basically an expanded version of the SAM model. So I hope that all made sense. I look forward to seeing some feedback. And oh wait, I forgot one of the things: applications in higher ed. For the ADDIE model, really the backwards design, I think, is the biggest thing. I talk to faculty members every day that have never heard of backwards design. And once I start talking about that, and then we go into the ADDIE model, things start to click. And to be honest, their courses get better, and their evaluations from students get better. And that's what we're here for. I think that agile development and technology integration, the ADDIE model is built for. I think the SAM model is too, but like I said, probably 5 or 6 times now, I think they're really, really similar. And, you know, that's my take on that. Like I said, I look forward to the feedback, and I will look for your all's post, and we'll talk about your all's as well. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.